Well, they did it, folks. Kansas State brings down Kansas. What a great win. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome to this live post-game reaction as the Kansas State Wildcats take down the Jayhawks in the Sunflower Showdown, 81-73. What an absolute win. I got Jeff Burkhart here to join me, host of the College and Kimball podcast, Kansas State alumni. Excited to have him on, and we're going to talk about this game because it was an exciting one. Before we get into it, though, Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with the FanDuel Sportsbook. New customer can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Jeff, what an absolute slobber knocker of a game from the absolute beginning. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat, but Kansas State looked good the entire time. I think they only were behind about 2 minutes this entire game. Before we dig into it, what was your initial reactions from this one? Obviously getting a huge win in Manhattan.
No doubt, and much needed to keep the momentum going from this hot streak. First impressions are they didn't do historically what we see Kansas do so often on the road, where they're the aggressor. They come out, they throw the first punch. K-State was live right from the first whistle, and Doug McDaniel obviously was very critical in facilitating things for the Wildcats on offense. The foul trouble on Dajuan Harris, obviously that loomed large as well, but it was big. K-State just always in this game seemingly had an answer. That was the one thing too, again, to somebody who's watched and seen many a KU come back on the road, and that's what's always separated great Bill Self teams is when they get down by that 15 to 17 point margin, you know they're going to make a run, and all of a sudden they'll just chip away. That never happened in this game. K-State had an answer. They really put the clamps down defensively in the second half because that was my big concern, just with the way that game started. Kind of a track meet. That's not necessarily the game that K-State's going to want to play. That doesn't really favor K-State, but the Wildcats were able to slow it down a little bit more deliberate, and they just knocked down shots in the second half. That was the other thing. That lead just never seemingly dipped until the final couple of minutes. They really never seemingly dipped under 10 points. They just always had an answer. Whenever KU would make a bucket, they would come down and they would knock down a big three. They would have that response locked and loaded. That was just very refreshing to see from a team that just has lacked or really for the better part of the first half of the season, just had no identity, no fortitude, no strength. And then now all of a sudden they're the ones leading the charge. They're the ones being aggressive, and they're the ones having the responses when teams are making them run. This is just a completely different team that we've seen in these last about 2.5 weeks, and it's been very fun to watch.
Oh, man, absolutely. And I love the fact that what you said about track meet, because that's exactly how this one felt. I mean, there was moments where you were begging Tang or even Self just to take a timeout because these guys were just gassed on the court. But it was absolutely incredible watching how this team played because it was a different style. And you're right. The way that they played earlier in this season, we can talk about it till we're blue in the face, how disappointing that team was, and obviously how we all felt about it with this new transfer class coming in, how disappointing it turned out. And then they've stepped up and just really done well over these last 6 games, but really 5 games, to be honest with you. But this game against Kansas felt like an entirely different level. The most shocking thing to me was this great start, because we go back a few Saturdays ago in Lawrence, they're down 14-0 in the first 4 minutes of the game, Jeff. And really the last couple games as well, against Iowa State, against Arizona State, they didn't do well initially right off the bat. They needed strategic timeouts from Jerome Tang. I thought that was going to be once again an issue, and that wasn't the case. They stepped up really well in this one right off the bat. I mean, they scored first. That was a huge thing. I mean, them scoring first, a nice 3-point shot, not having to worry about being down by multiple points after the first 4 minutes. Would you say that this is maybe the best 40 minutes of basketball we've seen from Kansas State so far this year?
Oh, undoubtedly. The Iowa State game, again, you mentioned it. That was just a weird kind of flurry that they had in the second half. But again, they just got punched in the face right out of the gate. And you just kind of thought, okay, we're we're going to have to take our medicine here and we'll get out of here with a loss and just move about the rest of the season. But obviously things did a complete 180 in that contest. But no, undoubtedly the best 40 minutes we've seen from this team, again, in all phases. There were hustle plays, guys were knocking down shots. Again, great defense in the second half. That was the one thing, like I said, KU shot it pretty well throughout the course of this game. They make 30 field goals, shoot 50% for the contest. And that was the one thing they would make a bucket here, here and there in that first half. And you just didn't know who's going to be the one to blink first. And it ended up being Kansas when Dajuan got that third foul. That was really what opened up the opportunity for Kansas State, and they took advantage there. But yeah, this again, you got contributions from so many guys. Moby making shots, some shots I wasn't expecting him to take in this one too, going against the likes of Hunter Dickinson, knocking down some big shots in the paint. David Gasson, another mammoth game from him after that 20-point performance against Arizona State. He has another huge game for Kansas State. Hustles so hard, great finisher at the rim. And Coleman Hawkins, just really everybody. It's hard to single out one guy as being the key cog in this victory. It was just a complete team effort, a full 40 minutes from this group on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think everybody played really well in this one that got into this game. Once again, Jerome Tang went with an 8-man rotation. He kind of, simplified that. We keep hearing about this in the broadcast, how the Tang has simplified the playbook. It also looks like it means simplifying the rotation as well. I want to get into that Harris foul trouble a little bit. Those 3 fouls right off the bat in the first 10 minutes of the game. I mean, he had to sit down because of 3 fouls. That was huge. And I think Kansas State did a really good job capitalizing that. They had an 8-point lead heading into halftime, especially after this really nice buzzer beater shot by Gasson in the corner. That was beautiful, by the way, to just add a little extra momentum inside the courthouse. I mean, it was just what an exciting first half it was. Take me through, what do you think that they did well to take advantage of that Harris foul trouble? Do you think that was a key factor for them being ahead in the first half? Or do you think that obviously there's other things that came into play?
I think that was solely the reason why, because Doug McDaniel could get around anybody. It didn't matter who self threw at him. Doug was able to get around. And again, that set up so many easy opportunities for, again, Moby, for David Gasson. Guys were doing a great job finishing at the rim. And again, that was largely just predicated on Doug being able to beat his man off the ball. So whenever, Dajuan Harris, who I'm pretty sure has been at KU as long as Perry Ellis, I mean, once he went out, that was the moment where I said, okay, if you're going to win this game, you have to capitalize. This lead has to go from being 5 to 6 points to be in double figures. And K-State was able to stretch it out to 12 there. They let KU get a couple buckets there towards the end of that first half, but you touched on it, that David Gasson baseline jumper. Didn't have that on my bingo card to close out the first 20 minutes there. But again, Doug McDaniel was massive in this game in so many different ways. And it was largely, again, ends up with a career high 11 assists in this one. And again, very unselfish, but he also took big shots too and knocked down big shots. And he was the one who started things off, and very fitting effort from him being kind of the catalyst in this game for Kansas State. That was the one guy too. Jerome Tang had, I don't want to say singled out throughout the course of that rocky start, but I think everybody, the unspoken thing that everybody knew about was we need Doug to buy in. He can make this team go. He can help this team ascend to a different level if we can just get him to lock in. And once Doug has done that, again, we see the byproduct of a K-State's reeled off 5 wins in a row. And we're talking about this team in a context that we certainly didn't think we would be through that first half of the conference play here. Doug McDaniel has been massive in so many different ways. And again, his ability just beating guys off the bounce. He's so fun to watch. Such a quick first step, just lethal in the open floor. You do have to live with some of those ill-advised passes at times, but you didn't really have too many of those today. K-State just collectively did a great job taking care of the ball. Only 10 turnovers in the contest. And Doug only ended up with 3 of those, but you have 11 assists on top of that. Like you'll take that any day of the week against KU.
Absolutely. I want to get into the fact that what you just said about Doug McDaniel and next level in just a moment, but I want to wrap up here about David Gasson first and Coleman Hawkins. I mean, Gasson deserves the flowers, and you mentioned it for the second game in a row, reaches 20 points, 7 rebounds in this one, only 2 fouls. I'm surprised they only gave him 1 block in this one because of what he did underneath the paint. I thought what they did against Hunter Dickinson in this one was really impressive. I thought they had a really good job of kind of making him look confused. They limited him early. They made him look confused, especially on the defensive side for a couple times. Now that changed in the second half, but initially in that first half, I think Moby did a really good job. I think Gasson did a really good job. And then of course, Coleman Hawkins, what he's done continues to be that stat stuffer, if you will, on the box score, that 12 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds himself, 5 blocks. I mean, Coleman Hawkins with his 5 blocks were absolutely incredible in this one. Overall, a really good game from this one. I'm seeing we got a lot of viewers in on this show. Do me a favor, hit your comments, give some questions. We will be answering them live on this show. But what an absolute game, 81-73 in this one. If you had to throw an MVP of this game, I feel like David Gasson has to get the notch. Would you agree?
Yeah, and you brought up a great point there. The confusion from Hunter Dickinson, he looked, I don't want to say lost, but K-State did a great job defensively. They started helping out on, and once again, this is a byproduct as well of Dajuan Harris being out of the game, and we're not going to be too worried about Shaquille or Coit or whoever taking shots from outside. They were willing to say, okay, when he gets a paint touch, if it's Coleman who's fronting him, if it's Gasson who's fronting him, let's bring another body over there and make him distribute the ball out. And I think that was, again, another big reason why K-State was able to come out on top in this game. Picking an MVP, again, it's so hard in this one, but the fact that Gasson, I really feel like not only did K-State confuse Hunter Dickinson, but I think Gasson was a big reason why they just outworked. I thought he just did a great job of outworking, out hustling him. I thought I don't want to say it was a lazy effort on his part, because Hunter Dickinson, he got his. He went out, came up close to 20 points there, or excuse me, did eclipse 20 points into 21. But it was a lazy 20. That was just my impression of it. Defensively, he wasn't doing a good job on rotations. K-State was doing a good job, like I said, breaking guys off in the paint and distributing, making that extra pass. And Gasson was the beneficiary on a lot of those. Again, it's so hard to single out one guy in this contest. I thought for a minute there it was going to be Max Jones early on. He has foul trouble. Coleman Hawkins, you can make a case for. But again, Gasson has to be the guy. Again, I love seeing that from him, a guy who's been in this program for 3 years, has been loyal to Tang throughout his tenure here. And to see him have kind of I don't know if this is a legacy game, but some might classify it as a legacy game. And just this back-to-back stretch from him, love seeing that from David Gasson. And he, by a very narrow margin, in my opinion, gets the nod for MVP for K-State in this one. But again, you can make a case for a lot of different guys.
I agree. Let me know in the comment description who you think deserves the MVP. Is it David Gasson? I agree with you, Jeff, as well, finishing with 20 points, 7 rebounds, and 1 block. And as you mentioned, Hunter Dickinson, just over 21 points. But I'm with you. I think it was a lazy 21. Had 9 rebounds as well. So he got his. I mean, he got his numbers when it's all said and done. If you're looking at the paper sheet when you're trying to figure out who wins Big 10 or Big 12 Player of the Year, he's obviously going to still remain in that conversation. But to me, he just didn't play as impressive as I thought we were going to see. And that was really in Lawrence, too. We really didn't see that too much as well from him. He finishes 50% from the field. I think he had his first 3-pointer in Big 12 play, I think they said during the broadcast in this one as well. But overall, Kansas State did a really good job at limiting Hunter Dickinson and, of course, limiting Harris because of foul trouble. We've got so much more to talk about. I want to get into Doug McDaniel. I want to talk a little bit more about Moby. And of course, there's some certain shot selections. I think there's still some ways to improve this team, which is obviously a great problem to have. We're going to do that all right here on Locked On Kansas State. Well, the big game is here, folks. There is no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions of winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get into the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less, at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you could win up to $1,000 in cash. And with the big game coming, Prize Picks even has a free pick coming in with Patrick Mahomes, who only needs to throw 1 yard to win. You pair that with one more correct pick, maybe like a Travis Kelce 50-plus receiving receiving yards. It seems like an easy pick. In my opinion, you are cashing out. So download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $50 instantly after you play your $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Go ahead now. Run your game. And welcome back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I mean, what a great feeling that we are talking on this Saturday right now, a day before the Super Bowl. And Jeff, I know, I already know, I see your Twitter bio. You're excited for that Super Bowl coming up. The Kansas City Chiefs looking for a three-peat, but you get a initial win, 81-73 against the Kansas Jayhawks. I know the Super Bowl's coming up, and I probably should save it for the end, but what's your prediction, Chiefs and Eagles?
Whew,
yeah. Throwing you out a spot, right?
I was gonna say I can't pick against them, it's one of those things. I love the Chiefs, and I'm one of those. I know so many people relish being the villain and whatnot. This is so hard to do at this level, and to see the Chiefs have this crazy run is really enjoyable. Again, as a fan and somebody who's, again, I'm a Kansas City native, lived in KC Mo for over a decade now. It's awesome. And I go down, and it's crazy too, going down to Union Station with my family. And I just think about this. I've got pictures of my kids from the time, like the first Super Bowl with Mahomes, and I see my son now, he's 7 years old. It's crazy to think about how they've just keep racking ring on ring on ring. And it's just one of those things. They've found a way in every tight game, by hook or by crook, some might say, but I have a hard time picking against them. I think it'll be pointsy again, like the game against Philadelphia a couple of years ago. So I'm expecting another shootout-y type, somewhere in the neighborhood 31-27. So and somebody who's on the over for the game tomorrow, I would love to see that. I think we'll get an entertaining ball game. But again, I'll take Mahomes and Andy Reid all day, and I think they do make history, and they get that third straight Super Bowl.
Gonna be wild. Let's get back to this game, because we got GHX yelling Ema, every man a Wildcat, absolutely. And Abe is talking about DNG. Gassan saying that he deserved the MVP. He's with us, and I agree. What a game, 81-73, and this is a big weekend for obviously Kansas and Missouri sports, if you will. But yeah, it's going to be a really fun time. Hey, I want to talk about Doug McDaniel, and we kind of already alluded to it at the beginning segment, but I want to start this segment off with Doug McDaniel, because Jerome Tang, right after the game in Arizona State, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I should probably get the quote in front of me because I've had to paraphrase quite a few times when I was talking about this, but he says Doug McDaniel is playing some of his best basketball lately, talking about after the Arizona State game. I think he probably could say it again. I'm sure he's going to say it in the post-game press conference in this one, but he also said that there are still 3 or 4 more levels left in his game to play. That's the crazy part about Doug McDaniel. He's not even playing his best basketball. He might be playing his best basketball right now, but there's still more to his game that we have yet to see. With what we saw against Kansas in this one, obviously getting a season high of 11 assists, playing 15 points. I mean, that spin cycle in the second half, Jeff, that play that he had was incredible. I mean, I jumped out of my seat. My chair knocked over. I was so pumped to watch that one. Are we seeing another level, and did we see the next level of Doug McDaniel in this one against the Jayhawks?
It's hard to argue to the contrary. Again, his shooting has improved here. I know he had a rough night against Arizona State, going 0 for 4, but just collectively here in conference play, he's knocked down multiple threes in looking at it, 4 out of the last 6 Big 12 games. And again, he's so lethal off the dribble and such a terrific finisher at the rim. A guy who goes high off the glass, can get to the rim and knock down shots. He's the guy. He's your catalyst. And if K-State's going to continue this crazy heater that they're on, it's going to be because he is setting guys up for other guys up for opportunities at the rim. He himself is continuing to knock down shots defensively, continuing to be a pest. Didn't see quite the tenacity that we're accustomed to seeing. Normally he pops a couple of balls loose, forces some turnovers. Didn't quite get that from him today. But again, at the end of the day, you needed him to be the guy on offense. So if you're expending more energy on that end of the floor in a game, especially when that goes over 150 points total, again, I'm fine with him maybe easing up the throttle a little bit on the defensive end and exerting a little bit more energy on the offensive end. And yes, I think, can he sustain this level of play? That's the big question. I think K-State as a whole, as you look down the pike here with the rest of this, the schedule, obviously you have a Bear coming up and the best team in the Big 12 in Arizona coming into Manhattan, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But you look down the road, I don't know if there's many guys that are going to be able to contain him. And if he's going to keep going off like this, K-State's going to continue to rack up wins. And the good news is, too, you've got a lot of that lower tier of the Big 12 as well. So these are games that are going to be winnable for K-State. And Doug McDaniel really just continue to see what he's been doing. And if you can just get a little bit better out of him each and every time out the floor, I think K-State will be in a fine position and will be in that crazy spot that we didn't even think was possible here come March, where we might actually be talking about this team maybe sneaking in as an 11 or a 12 seed. Who knows?
Oh man, I could only imagine. And I was so excited to just even think about that possibility. And I want to get your thoughts on that in just a moment. Hey, before I make this next thought process here, I want to put out a disclaimer that I am not a shot doctor, nor do I even pretend to play one on TV. Okay. But with Doug McDaniel, there's this one thing that kind of irks me when I watch his game. And maybe you can agree with me or maybe not, or maybe this is something that I should just completely forget. But these floaters he does mid-range that always seem to come up short and hit the front of the rim. Is that something that he should continue to play in his game? Maybe they're just missing and he'll figure that out. Or is that something that maybe we should maybe adjust? Is that something that even I should worry about? But that's one thing that gets me is his shot selection on those mid-range little floaters he does that always seem to feel like hit the front of the rim.
Yeah, and I remember one distinctly where he passed up a wide open three, what could have been, a knockout type of shot late in the second half, and he drove into the lane and he clanked one of those. I'm one of those, like, if you're going to run at the rim, you better be throwing it up. And I know this is kind of the name of the game anymore in basketball, just in general. If you're taking a two, it's got to be a dunk or a layup. If you're taking, and otherwise, you better be taking perimeter shots beyond the arc and get your EFG up. I'm one of those, like, if it goes in, it's great. But I too would be like, especially in a game where he was getting by guys so easily and setting other guys up, just as I might, if I'm Tang, I'm saying, hey, if Hunter Dickinson has to suck up, if KJ Adams has to suck up and offer some help, look for the lob. Don't look for that floater. If you get it, there's probably going to be a guy with a higher percentage shot and a better chance to finish at the rim than you. So it's one of those, you have to take the good with the bad. And again, not as many ill-advised passes and turnovers from him today, but yeah, shot selection, little suspect, but it's hard for me to knock it when he ends up with 15 and hit some pretty crucial threes. Honestly, I think he's getting a lot more confident from behind the arc. And I would say to him, hey, I know your natural instinct is to penetrate and kick, or penetrate and take that shot. But maybe if you're getting wide open looks from three and you're set up for it in rhythm, take those. I got no problem with the guys taking those shots anymore.
Yeah, he was 50% from behind the arc, 3 for 6 in this one. And I don't want to really push shot selection too much, although I'm going to ask you another question in just a minute about another player. But I guess let's use a Jerome Tang buzzword here over the past couple weeks. Tinkering, I feel, is probably a good problem to have right now when you're talking about tinkering with this team. We're not talking about how they're so far behind or so far away from being a great team. Now we're talking about the potential just small adjustments to be one of the top teams in the Big 12. And that's a crazy spot to be at, to where we were initially just a few months ago, maybe even just weeks ago. So I want to wrap up this segment just asking one more shot selection question about this game. And obviously they won by 8. So this is just more of a adjustments moving forward. But Brennan Hawson was 3 for 10 from behind the line. Obviously he gets a 3. He gets 9 points in this one. That's great to see. But there were a couple times where it felt like they were just feeding him to take the shot no matter what. A couple of them went air balls. Are you okay with him taking 10 shots, 10 threes a game, knowing that you're going to get at least 3 or 4 to fall every time from a guy like Brennan Hawson? I am, but are you okay with some of those maybe being shots that probably could be a lot better shots from inside or things like that? Again, we're making these crazy small little, adjustments, and it's a good problem to have, knowing that you won by 8 against the Jayhawks.
There were a couple of those. He knocked down one, and then you just kind of he took a couple of heat check ones that were a little bit more closely contested, where I said, okay, let's calm down with some of these. And At the end of the day, though, you know what he's out there for. He is not going to be taken. He's not driving to the lane. He's not looking to distribute. He is there to bomb away. And when he knocked down that first one, I'm like, okay. And then he airballed a couple in a row. Like, let's reel it back in. And I know that's kind of one of those moments in a game like this where the lead, you've punched it out. At that point, it had gotten out to 14-15. You're feeling pretty confident just with the way that you have been playing throughout the course of the contest, and you're just feeling yourself a little bit. I think Hazen had kind of got caught up in that in the heat of the moment there. But if he could have dialed it down, maybe take 7 threes in a game like this instead of 10, because again, some of those were they were bad looks. They were pretty closely contested by KU defenders. I was not thrilled with the shot selection in some of those where you could have potentially pushed that lead out to 18, 19, 20 points and really felt comfortable coming down the home stretch. And that was the tough thing where it was just like where he would take those and then KU comes down and gets a basket. And K-State would have the answer more often than not, but that was one of those where you could have been a little bit more relaxed. Heart rate might have gone down a little bit those last 4 or 5 minutes of the contest had he been a little bit more selective and maybe worked the ball around a little bit more and set somebody else up for a better shot.
How crazy is it that we're talking about a true, honest, possible scenario that we would have been up on the Kansas Jayhawks, a 16th ranked team, a team that beat us by 10 just a few weeks ago by 19 or 20 points. I mean, we led by 15 at one point in this game. They really played great. To get to this last segment here, we got to ask the question, the elephant of the room: is this team an NCAA tournament team? And what is next heading for the Wildcats in the rest of Big 12 play? We'll finish it up that right here on Locked On Kansas State. Well, tomorrow, folks, Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling an MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easier to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and with the app, it's super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can just place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets just for watching the Super Bowl, well, that's icing on the cake. Download the app and head to FanDuel.com to get started and bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. And welcome on back to Locked On Kansas State. Hey, for your second listen of the day, check out Locked On Big 12. Drake Toll and the rest of the Big 12 squad have you covered, covering everything across the Big 12 Conference. And speaking of the Big 12 Conference, Jeff, I'm joined by Jeff Burkhart. You can find him at College Kimball, and you can find him on Twitter at Jeff_Burkhart. Do him a favor. He's got plenty of great stuff, lots of good Kansas State stuff covered for you over on his Twitter account. But Jeff, we got to talk about what's next for this Kansas State Wildcat squad. Obviously, what a great run they're on right now. 5 games in a row. They've defeated 23 ranked West Virginia. They've defeated Oklahoma State in a game that they were looking for a season sweep. Nope, no thank you. And go ahead and put that Mutombo finger up. Didn't happen. They go to Ames and they take down Iowa State in what could have been the biggest game of the year. But I think this next one that they just did against Kansas was, and obviously smacked in between them, they take care of Arizona State on the road as well. Now they got one final game in Manhattan before they have a 2-game road trip. And this one could be a tough one. Number 20 ranked Arizona, but you mentioned it earlier. This team is playing like the best team in the Big 12, and conference standings also say the same. After beating Iowa State, after beating West Virginia, and after beating the Kansas Jayhawks, how are you feeling about them taking on the Arizona Wildcats in Manhattan later on this week?
Well, the big question is, did you empty the tank? And with the way that they played, they shot it so well against KU today. That's a very legitimate concern. I like the fact that you're not doing a Saturday, Monday turnaround. You at least get one more day to decompress, to compartmentalize, to move forward to the next game. But it's going to be a tough out. Again, emotionally, it's been a very draining couple of weeks. Again, you have You get the lucky clank at the end of the game against Arizona State. Again, as I said, you empty the tank against KU today to get the big win, make it, I believe, 12 wins now for Jerome Tang against ranked opponents in Bramlage Coliseum. A remarkable stat there. Can they make it lucky number 13 against Arizona? That's going to be a big, tall ask just with the way that Arizona has been playing here as of late. And Arizona's got a pretty tall order today, too. They're going to be entertaining Texas Tech. So, just with the way this team has been playing, I don't question now. I don't go in dreading, are they even going to be locked in today? Are they going to be motivated? Are we going to have to question effort? Are we going to have to see David Castillo for multiple minutes? Are we going to have to see Moby Ike Karuga for 20 plus minutes in a game? I think Tang has tightened up the rotation. He knows who he can trust, who can be out on the floor for extended minutes. Again, great contributions from K-State's bench today with CJ Jones and Moby scoring for the Wildcats. But they've shortened up the rotation. They know who's coming in. And it's going to be another raucous atmosphere. And that's that's another big thing. Can K-State fans, can you bring it? Can you make the OOD rock one more night? And I think the Wildcat fans will be up for that challenge. I expect K-State to be up for the challenge as well. But again, like I said, I just have that concern in the back of my head that Arizona is going to be coming in. We'll see how they fare tonight against Texas Tech, but Arizona is going to be coming in thinking about a conference championship, and conference championship contenders, they go on the road and they get these big games. Even if you're playing hot teams like Kansas State, Arizona is one of those teams who would tell you they would find a way to win this type of a game. But I think I think this team is going to be up for the task. I think we'll see a good effort from this group once again. Caleb Love, that's going to be a very sensational matchup to watch, regardless of who's going to be taking him on for Kansas State. I'm just looking forward to it. I think this team is on a heater, and if you can rack this one up to another resume point, another ranked win, another quad one win, then the dream doesn't become quite as far-fetched. I know that's one other item we wanted to get into here in a little bit.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And you mentioned Caleb Love. He was a preseason All-American first team heading into the season. He's been playing really good basketball. You mentioned that they got a tough matchup. They're playing 13th ranked Texas Tech tonight. I believe that one is at 9:30 Central Time. It's a late one if you wanted to get a little idea of what they're playing. And you mentioned about Arizona, how a tough game they're going to be. You know, they play Texas Tech tonight, and then right after Kansas State, they have 5th ranked Houston just a few days later. Is this a possibility? And I don't recommend they do so because Kansas State's on a heater, but is there a possibility where this part in the schedule for Kansas State taking on Arizona is potentially a trap game for this team, or a game where Arizona might be looking beyond Kansas State and looking towards Houston?
And honestly, looking at just the way things have set up for some of K-State's opponents here these last couple of times out, obviously, Iowa State, you look at that game in Hilton Coliseum, they were coming off of just that gut punch against Arizona, losing that one in Tucson in overtime. And they're getting ready to come home on Saturday. Oh, we're going to knock K-State out. We're going to win this game by 20, 25 points going away. And then also from the Iowa State perspective, they were probably looking ahead saying, we got to go to KU right after this. And then again, K-State favorably, they get to go play in Tempe after Arizona State unloads everything they had trying to upset their in-state rival, Arizona State trying to upset Arizona on their home floor. So K-State was fortunate to get Arizona State coming off of a very emotional game there. And you touched on it perfectly. That was a great point to bring up, because that was one thing where I feel like maybe if you are U of A, you're looking at Houston, that's the other team that's right next to you in the standings. I could see looking at that Kansas State game midweek, going on the road, maybe not being totally focused on that and looking ahead. I think that they're a very well coached team, but I think that is one element that definitely bodes well for Kansas State, knowing that Houston is on the horizon for the Arizona Wildcats. I could definitely see them looking past Kansas State, looking ahead to that big matchup against Houston, and arguably that could be the game that decides the regular season Big 12 champion too.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. And maybe, hopefully that is the case for Kansas State, to be completely honest. We'll see what happens in that one. There's going to be so much to talk about coming ahead, and I want to hear what Coach Tang has to say. We'll obviously have you covered here on Locked on Kansas State later on in the week as we get closer to that one. To wrap this show up, Jeff, I got to know, do you think this team right now Obviously, they have to have a strong rest of the season, but the resume is building. They have a couple quad one wins right now. They've defeated Kansas at home. They got the season split against them. They obviously still have to take down other teams later on in the year. Arizona, we mentioned, they got to play Iowa State again. But do you like where this team's heading as a potential team in the NCAA tournament come March?
Yeah, I was one of those. I thought, like, when people were saying when they were 10-11, I was like, okay, if they can take care of Arizona State, if they can beat KU, and if they find a way, and even if they just did that, I was like, okay, you can maybe start to dream a little, because it's not necessarily the marquee wins now. You just, if you can take care of business and beat teams that I think this team has demonstrated it's better than on a neutral floor. K-State playing Cincinnati, you got to get that game. K-State hosting Arizona State, you got to get that game. Take care of the games that you can take care of. And honestly, you kind of put yourself in a point now where, even looking at those the big two home games that remain, the Arizona contest and Iowa State, if you split those, but you take care of those road games and those teams that are at the bottom end of the Big 12, and even if you're sitting there at 18-13 at the end of the regular season, you're in a position where I'd say, okay, maybe you just need to go 1-1 in Kansas City and you're in. You might be having to play might have to be in the play-in game, but I think just with the way that this team is playing, how confident they are, just continue to play with this level of energy and excitement and passion. And I think this team is going to be able to handle business against those teams, those inferior. I hate using the word inferior. They could go out and they could lose any one of these, but I think looking at these teams towards the bottom of the Big 12 standings, just with the way the K-State's playing now, I'm at a point where I have to say I expect K-State to beat Arizona State at home. I expect them to beat Cincinnati on the road and Utah on the road. They have to do that and just take care of those teams that are losing, and just maybe get a split against Arizona and Iowa State. I think you'll have a shot. You will have a shot, but you got to take care of business, continue to do one game at a time. And I know I'm doing a lot of projecting right now, but I always say just make the next game matter. You can't trip up at home. If K-State had lost against Arizona State, there's not going to be nearly as much juice for this Kansas game. And then if you stub your toe there, then all of a sudden all that good equity that you have built up against Iowa State goes right out the window. They haven't done that. They've made the next game matter, and that's what I'll say. Just continue to make the next game matter, and you will have a shot.
Yep, 18-13 would mean 6-2 for the rest of the way, and then 1-1 in the Big 12 Conference Championship Tournament, as you mentioned. I'm with you. I think that is exactly what gets them in, even if it is a trip to Dayton for the first four. And I take that after having a terrible non-conference start, after having a terrible conference start. I'd take a trip to Dayton if that meant just even getting a chance in the dance after what happened last year after being the NIT. I mean, just getting that chance with this type of team who has this type of buy-in now, who had, look at me doing another Tang buzzword, who has this type of energy now. I mean, this team has what it takes to play and get an extra win, if you will, even if it means going to Dayton and getting it done. Jeff, where can everyone find you with your work? What do you got coming up? I know you're just hopping back in. I'm helping you tear the Band-Aid off, getting back into the podcast world, but let everyone know where they can find you and what you got coming on.
For sure. Yeah, Twitter handle is just Jeff_Burkhart there. Again, I'm Cats, Chiefs, Royals from time to time as we approach spring training here. You'll hear me chirping about that on X, I guess now officially. And then college_Kimball. A little bit of personal, like I stopped doing it just because of some personal things, just with jobs, and my wife and I, we ended up moving into a new house. These last couple of years the falls have just been very chaotic, and it's been very tough to carve out the time to do it. But I'm going in an intention on getting back into it come this fall, and looking forward to doing a summer preview series as well. So I will be getting back into it and whatnot. So yeah, college_Kimball and then Jeff_Burkhart. Looking forward to talking about what should be a very entertaining K-State football season. I know we just got the schedule release here this past week. Very bullish on the Wildcats. They're obviously, you mentioned FanDuel at the outset there, one of our sponsors. They are one of the favorites there to win the Big 12. And I think a lot of people have big expectations. Avery Johnson coming off of a season where he broke the school single season passing touchdown record. And with all the pieces they've compiled there in the wide receiver room and all the tight end talent, and not to mention Lincoln Cure, Dylan Edwards, I think we're going to be in store for a very fun season of Kansas State football, and I'll be there to cover it on College and Kimball.
I love it. Absolutely. And he's going to be back. Hopefully, I hope to have you back and for more post games and more things here on Lockdown Kansas State as well, because this was a blast. And hopefully, hey, you brought good luck too. I mean, your first post game with me, and we take down the Jayhawks. So plenty more to come, hopefully, here on Lockdown Kansas State. Hey, everyone. Thank you.
Gotta keep it going.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching. Please like the video. Please subscribe. And this has been Locked On Kansas State.